First of all, I want to welcome Minister Donovan, but I'm disgusted that Minister O'Donoghue isn't here. No disrespect to Minister Donovan. Look, we did bail out the banks, and my children and grandchildren, all yours, will be paying them back. But they've given the two fingers completely to the 80,000 plus people, families who had got a break. First was 3 months, then to 6 months. Take one industry alone, the music and entertainment industry, who give us so much solace, who do so much for our mental health and our well-being. They've been thrown overboard. We're all in this together, the Taoiseach will tell us, and others. But they've been thrown overboard. All these small business people, they expected some bit of solace in the banks. Didn't really know they get it, but expected it. So there's absolutely no legislation to deal with the banks, and you have refused to introduce it. Many other EU countries have introduced legislation to deal with this situation, to make the banks. So we need legislation, Minister, to force the banks, because you left the meeting with them until last Monday, 3 days before it was going to run out. It was just a token meeting. You're not dealing with the banks. You haven't dealt with the banks, and the banks have no interest in dealing with people sensitively one by one. They have brought people before the courts all through the pandemic and had cases in the High Courts, vulture funds, everything else. You enabled the vulture funds to use the hearsay law. So it's time this government brought in legislation to put manners on the banks.
Thank you. Garmagut.
Last Count Corla, and I want to first of all apologise on behalf of Ministers Donoghue and Fleming, who unfortunately can't be here today. But I want to thank the deputies for raising the important issue that they have. COVID-19 has had a significant impact, we all know, on many households and businesses, and the banks and other regulated lenders did move quickly on foot of the government requests to support their impacted mortgages and other borrowers by putting in place payment breaks across the industry. The latest figures from the Banking and Payments Federation of Ireland indicates that around 89,000 payment breaks were granted to mortgage customers, and breaks were also put in place for a further 32,000 SMEs and 4,000 corporate borrowers. It is to be welcomed that some of the borrowers who had a payment break have now been able to resume loans, their regular loan payments. The Central Bank and BPFI data indicates that over 90% of the borrowers that have finished a payment break have returned to full repayments on the existing term. However, it is important that lenders continue to liaise with and work with borrowers, as Deputy McGrath said, in a position to resume loan repayments, that are flexible repayment arrangements are provided for as necessary. In that regard, the BPFI have indicated that the broad repayment options for borrowers who can recommence loan repayments following a COVID-19 payment break are to return to repayments over the existing term of the mortgage, or to extend the term of the loan to allow the borrower to spread the repayments over longer periods of time. These repayment arrangements are important, as they will facilitate and help many borrowers meet their loan commitments at the end of a COVID-19 payment break. But lenders should also fully explain the nature of the new repayment and outline its implications in terms of cost and any other relevant factors. The Minister for Finance is very conscious that many other borrowers continue to be impacted by the economic consequences of COVID-19 and that they are not yet in a position to meet their loan commitments. He is also fully aware of the stress and uncertainty that these borrowers are still facing, and they will continue to need assistance and support from their lenders and indeed from the government. For its part, the government is continuing to provide significant income supports for people who cannot get back to work. Together with grants, credit facilities and other supports are also available to businesses which continue to be affected by the restrictions which are necessary to control the pandemic. Banks and lenders also need to continue to work with and support their customers and borrowers who are still impacted by COVID-19. As deputies will be aware, the Taoiseach, the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform and the Minister for Finance met with the CEOs of the retail banks and the BPFI on Monday, and that point was clearly and strongly made to them, and in fairness to them, it was accepted by the lenders as well, as Deputy McGrath has also said. At the meeting, the banks outlined the plans that they have for their customers who will be coming off payment breaks, and they indicated that this engagement is a priority matter for them. They indicated that they will have approximately 2,500 staff actively working on this, and they will seek to work with and understand the individual situation of every borrower and wish to put in place an individual solution for them if and when it's required. They stressed that their focus is on engagement, assessment and solutions for those who are still impacted by the pandemic. The recent change in the EBA guidelines for COVID-19 payment breaks, which the Minister for Finance wishes to emphasise, refers only to the closing date for an application for a COVID-19 break, does not restrict or hinder lenders from agreeing appropriate further support arrangements on a case-by-case basis for borrowers. Indeed, the EBA has made it clear that such continued COVID-19 supports can include further breaks on loan repayments. However, the options will also be available to borrowers at the end of COVID-19 payment break and will be better overall for the borrower. The best individual arrangements can only be found where there is a meaningful engagement by both the lender and the borrower, and the Government is very conscious that that has to be by by the lender especially. However, it will be important that lenders now live up to the commitments that they've made to the government, and indeed, much more importantly, to their customers, who are still experiencing genuine difficulty. In that regard, I welcome the statement by the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, where he said that the Central Bank, which is the statutory regulator of the banks and other lenders, and which is also the body that has prime responsibility for protecting the consumer of financial services, will intensify its engagement with lenders to ensure that they are engaging effectively and meaningfully and providing the appropriate post-payment break to borrowers who need it.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you.
Good. Look, Minister, that reply is not yours. It's actually, look, it's useless, toothless and fruitless. The inertia that's in this government and the last government to deal with the banks. We have no legislation. Other countries in Europe have brought in legislation to compel the banks to deal with people in this COVID situation. This is cold comfort to the people in the music industry, the taxi drivers, the small businesses, everybody. We're all in this together in a big boat. But you've cut adrift the 85,000 or at least 50,000 small business people who have mortgaged their homes, who've mortgaged their vans and their equipment, and that's all going to be taken from them now. Some of it is starting already, and they're out in a dinghy, an inflatable dinghy that's losing air fast, and you don't care about them. These people need our support, need our help, and I can't understand. You're like rabbits in the headlights, afraid of the banks. The banks have treated people dastardly in this country. They've done it for decades. And the skullduggery that's going on, and the blackguarding, and the amount of poor people that have ended their lives with suicide as a result of this, the amount of families destroyed, mental health issues, because of what the banks created in the last scandal. This is outside our control, but the banks are carrying on their merry way, and you are intimidated by them.
Thank you,
we need to deal with the central bank, not sweet talk.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lascion Corla. Well, deputies, the first thing that the government wanted to do for everybody who had any interaction with any financial institution was to protect their income. Not in the same context of the way Deputy O'Murrough might be more familiar with it than most deputies would be in the House, that was happened in Northern Ireland. The government here have protected in excess of 1.3 million people, both through the pandemic unemployment payment and the temporary wage subsidy scheme. Now, Deputy Barrett might say that, that the government policy is just to sit back and do nothing. Over the last number of months, the government has done absolutely everything in its power and beyond what most European Union countries have done to protect people in the first instance with their income and then protect their job. Because in protecting their job, it's protecting their ability to make sure that they're able to make all payments that are within their scope, particularly their day-to-day living expenses. And I think maybe the other jurisdiction on this island might learn an awful lot from what has happened on this side of the border. And in your, if you have any correspondence, Deputy O'Murrough, you might like to pass on what the government in the South has done. And Deputy McGrath, you're absolutely right in relation to the stresses that people are under. And that's why the Taoiseach, the Ministers for Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform have engaged not only in the last week, but on a continuous basis through their officials in the Departments of Finance, Public Expenditure and Reform and Enterprise, with all of the CEOs of all of the banks. Because without, and Deputy Barrett might choose to not recognise it, you do need a functioning banking sector, Deputy, in order for there to be a functioning business sector. Now, I know you might want to nationalise them all and turn it into some sort of Cubana bank, but in real terms, that doesn't work anywhere other than the only two countries in the world where that works is North Korea and Cuba. And I don't think realistically that the people of Dunleary would advocate for, Kim Jong by Barrett to be, policies to be advocated. So the government is committed. The government is committed to working with borrowers and lenders and everybody else, because this country is in a financially precarious position, as are other European countries. But coming in without flippant throwaway comments in the hope that you get a few airlines or a few lines in the paper really is doing nothing for the people at the end of the day who want to keep their jobs.
We have three more topics.